And what it does is, depending on who you use, now Joe Taylor designed this back in 2008, and he works at Princeton University. He's an astrophysicist. He has a Nobel Prize. He's a pretty smart guy, and he designed this in 2008, and that's what the first paper is going to be about here. Then came along soda beams. Now, soda beams is from Britain. They designed beams and general antennas, but they're famous for their beams, very good quality. And they came out with a shortcut version of what Joe Taylor did. Now, Joe Taylor, the way he came up with it, he designed it, and it requires your radio, because you could do this for free, your radio and a computer. Now, what's going to be required? A sound card for your operating system is going to be tied into it. If you transmit, which you're going to, the serial port key to your push-to-talk is going to be hooked in to the computer as well. Alternately, you could use a Vox control. And then there's going to be an audio connection, the receiver and the transmitter sound card. Now, after reading this, I thought it got to be a little bit complicated. And doing it this way, you're running if let's say you do this for 24 hours, and you could do it for 24 or 48, or you could do it for, up to close to a month. But suppose you're dealing with this for 24 hours. You're tying up your radio, and you're tying up a computer. And to me, that really wasn't the way to go. Now, when I discovered this, I happened to be on the internet, and there was a gentleman on YouTube giving a presentation on a vertical antenna and an off-center fed dipole. And he wanted to compare the two antennas. But what he was using was this little device right here by Soda Beams. And he actually ran two of them. He ran one for one antenna and one for another. And what he would do is he would transmit, and after about 2 hours he would switch to the other one and transmit, and he would go back and forth. And there is a mode inside the software that lets you compare what you're getting out of the antennas. Now, again, Joe Taylor's involves a computer. It involves your radio. But you could run up to 5 watts, which is they're legal. Or you could run it down to half a milliwatt. This here does 200 milliwatts maximum. Half a milliwatt up to 200. And to me, this is fine. To run 5 watts, I think that's a little bit, for checking an antenna out. What you want to do is you want to check it, what it stands for here, weak signal propagation reporter. You want to know how your antenna's running. Anybody can run a kilowatt and everybody's going to hear that. But if you run 200 milliwatts and you try to do it throughout the world, the amount of people you get is going to tell you how your antenna is performing. Now,
You want me to start?
yeah, I'm going to start, but when this presentation starts, this is based on the Soda Beams Whisper Light. And why I like this is because you can run it with an Apple charger, takes nothing. It doesn't require your radio or computer or anything. Everything is self-contained in the unit. And I have mine set up with the configuration app to run a maximum of 3 days. You could set it if you want for 20 days or 25. But 3, usually I run it for 24 hours just to check how the propagation, because besides signal strength and everything else, I want to see how the antenna is performing. When is getting out the most? When is the hot spots? And for 20 meters, you're going to find that somewhere between 11 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. That's going to be your hot spots. And it'll show you on the software where when it goes to nighttime, it's going to die off almost dead. So that just tells me when it's performing. Also, besides that, you could run this on a little charger, what you charge your cell phone on. And what does this, the advantage to this is, now suppose you're Andy and he wants to do some QRP work. And he's curious on how his antennas do. He could take this unit out to the field, plug this into it, and I'm using this dummy load as the antenna, and plug it into the antenna and let it run, just like that, for 24 hours. And then he could be home on his computer and he can monitor it and see how the antenna's doing. If he's pleased with the work, the next day he may go out and switch this and hook up his antenna to his radio and start to broadcast. If he's not pleased, he may do something else. At home, I presently have an off-center fed dipole. And I have a long wire antenna. When I compare the two antennas, even though the long wire is very broad-banded, and that gives me almost everything I could work with, it cannot come close to the performance of the off-center fed dipole for international work, as far as going into Europe or going down to Australia, where the long wire won't do it. And this program shows me that. Now, in the presentation, they're going to explain everything about it. They're going to explain all these things that I'm talking about. And then later you can question me. I have 2 parts to this. Now, when I purchased this item, when I first saw the presentation on the internet, they had what they called the Soda Beam Flexi. Well, no, not the Flexi, the Whisper Light. And the Whisper Light does 20 meters down. So 20, 30, 40, 80, 160, it does down. Now what it has built in is a low pass filter for 30 and 20. Everything else, you must use a low pass filter. But if you're Andy again, and I use Andy because he's very good in QRP, you may want to just do your 20 meters. And that's going to require nothing.
Yes, the club owns 3 low-pass filters. If anybody goes this route, you let them know it's yours for free. They're sitting in the up jump box. Fire away.
Okay. Now, this was out for a couple of years, and then they came out with the Soda Beam Flexi, which is the exact same thing, the exact same size as this, except it has no filtering at all. You're required to use a low pass filter for everything. But it goes all the way up to 6 meters, and I think you could even do it, you can go into the VHF if you wanted to. But it does everything down. So in other words, it's going to do 17, it's going to do 18, 21. It's going to take everything all the way up. And at the second presentation, which is only it's a shorter one. They're going to explain the flexi, and they're going to explain the difference between the two. Now, this is not an expensive item. To buy the Whisper Lite, when I bought it, it was $72. Now it happens to be $77. To buy the Flexi, it's about $93 it's listed now. These are not high-priced items, but I'll tell you what, if you put up an antenna, I'm sure when you come home and you spend a month trying to get a signal report for people, could you tell me how my radio is performing? How's this? How's that? You know, with this here, you can plug it in, go to bed, let it run 24 hours, come back on the computer and check everything out. And it's going to tell you everything, eliminating all this. And if you want to know when the hot spots are, again, it'll enable you to pick those areas out. Now with that, I'm gonna go with John. Now this fella here is from Britain. He's very good. And I went to I looked at a couple other ones, and they got into too much confusion. One of them talked about Joe Taylor's. Again, Joe Taylor, amazing guy. He came up with the system. But it requires a computer, it requires your radio, and ties them up for as long as you want to run this. For this here, you could just plug in. So, okay, run the presentation, and
Greetings everyone, this is Michael, G0POT, and today I'd like to do a quick review of the new Sotabeam's Whisper Lite, this tiny, lightweight Whisper transmitter. But before we have a look at this in detail, let's just have a quick review of what Whisper is. My analogy is that if JT65 and Reverse Beacon Network had babies, that baby would be Whisper. But let's take a look and see what the internet has to say about Whisper. WSPR, pronounced Whisper, stands for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, and it uses a program which compresses just a small amount of information and sends it over a roughly 110-second duration with strong forward error correction. Basically, you act as a beacon and send your data with lots of redundancy to give the receiving station the best possible chance of being able to decode it correctly, which means you can be decoded over very long distances with very low power. Whisper was originally written and released in about 2008 by Joe Taylor, Kilo 1, Juliet Tango. Incidentally, if you've never come across Joe, go and check him out on the internet. He's an amazing guy, an astrophysicist by profession. He's created a number of weak signal modes for amateur radio and is a true explorer in our hobby. So there are two parts to this Whisper mode: transmitting, where you act as a beacon, and receiving. You don't have to do both. The transmissions, which are low power, typically from a few milliwatts up to a watt or two, carry the station's call sign, maidenhead, grid locator, and transmitter power in decibels. The program is designed to decode signals with a signal-to-noise ratio as low as -28 dB. Receiving stations with internet access can automatically upload their reception reports to a centralized online database called WhisperNet, and this provides a very simple way to view the data, either in tables or with a propagation map. The standard message payload looks like this, and the protocol allows for 28 bits for the call sign, 15 bits for the locator, and 7 bits for the power level. Note that the power is sent in decibels, or dBm. This is an abbreviation for power ratio in decibels, dB, of the measured power referenced to 1 milliwatt. As you can see, it's possible to convey power levels using just 2 digits. Transmissions normally start at the beginning of an even minute, so in our case, we'd start the transmission about now. Transmissions take just under 2 minutes, and it's best if you repeat these randomly over time so that stations aren't continuously transmitting. This reduces the interference and improves your chances of being heard. Now this video is just an overview, so I won't go into the technical details of the mode, but if you want to find out more, I'll put some links in the description below. So, back to the SOTABeams Whisper Lite. You get three things when you buy the Whisper Lite. You get the transceiver, or beacon if you prefer. You get a configuration utility for setting it up with your own preferences. And you also get access to a website called DXplorer, which contains a number of analysis tools to allow you to look at your results. Let's start by having a look at the Whisper Lite itself. The unit is a tiny self-contained propagation beacon transmitter. It measures just 56 by 50 by 17 millimeters, where if you want to include all the sticky out bits, that's 65 by 50 by 23 millimeters, and it weighs just 43 grams. It's powered via the micro USB socket, and even though it only requires a maximum of 150 milliamps, you want to ensure a reasonable quality supply is used to avoid introducing interference. The aerial output is an SMA socket, and to connect to a typical HF aerial, you're going to need a BNC or PL259 converter. My preference is a dongle, as this takes any stress off the Whisper Lite itself. And let's face it, this thing doesn't weigh a whole lot more than the PL259. The Whisper Lite operates on 160, 80, 40, 30 and 20 meters, and the unit contains filters for 30 and 20 meter operation. If you want to operate on other bands, you'll require band-specific low-pass filters, and SOTABeams now make a multi-band filter for this. The output is adjustable from 5 milliwatts to 200 milliwatts, and we'll take a look at how to set this up shortly using the configuration utility. Finally, on the front of the unit, you have a single push button to start the beacon. Remember, you need to do this at the beginning of an even minute, and an LED, which indicates the Whisper Lite is transmitting. Okay, let's load up the configuration utility and get this thing connected to a PC. So to configure the unit, we plug it into our laptop or desktop PC using a USB lead. You'll note that while plugged in, the LED flashes red. We're almost ready to configure this thing. The first time you plug your Whisper Lite into your PC, it will automatically download the drivers. Let me just open the Windows dialog box so we can see the drivers being installed. The unit installs as a USB UART bridge, and hopefully we can see it's installing on COM4. Right, let's start the config utility, which I've already installed from the SOTABeams website. To connect your Whisper Lite, we have to choose the correct serial port from the drop-down box. I only have one device set up, but you may have to select the correct serial port to use. Once this is done, we select Connect. We now need to set up the unit and configure it with the information that will form the transmitted payload, so call sign and locator. I'm putting the full locator in, but only the first 4 characters are used. If you're not sure of your locator, click on the Find My Locator link and use the web mapping tool to find your QTH. The unit only has built-in low-pass filtering for 20 and 30 meters, so if you select, say, 40 meters, you'll get a warning that an external low-pass filter is required. Next, you can select what output power you wish to use. You have options from 5 to 200 milliwatts. Finally, the transmitted payload includes your transmitted power, and as you could be using an amplifier or an attenuator to modify it, you have the option of setting this as needed. If you're not modifying it, just leave it as Whisper Lite output power. Be careful if you do choose an output power to make sure that you select watts or milliwatts correctly. The final 2 settings are down to how you wish to use your Whisper Lite and aim to maximise results but minimise interference. Repeat rate determines how many of the available 2-minute slots your unit uses to transmit. If you select 100%, it would transmit every 2 minutes, so 30 times an hour. Selecting 20% should result in about 6 transmissions an hour. You can limit how long the device runs for, so if you just want to analyse aerial performance, this stops you arbitrarily transmitting for long durations. Once we're happy with our configuration settings, we hit the Save Whisper Settings button, and these are written to the Whisper Lite. You can change the configuration of your device as often as you like. Just plug your Whisper Lite back into your PC and rerun the configuration tool. The final part of the SOTABeams offering is the DXplorer web analysis tool. Anyone can access the basic version of this to try, but as a Whisper Lite owner, you have access to a premium service. You can access this for the first time by selecting the Open in Browser button, or copying the unique URL shown and pasting it into your browser. Don't forget to bookmark this so that you don't have to come back here to get the link again. Okay, here is the main DXplorer window with buttons to select the different views and set up any filtering. You can check you have access to the full features by ensuring it says Premium Mode in the top right hand corner instead of Standard Mode. And if at any time you're not sure about some aspect of using Whisper Lite, the configuration tool or DXplorer, there is a link to the WSPR help file here. So let's take a quick look at the features of DXplorer. DX10 table gives a nice summary of the stations that are received you, ordered by distance, but instead of listing every hit individually, it simply records the number of hits or counts. Where you have configured a comparative station, their stats will also be recorded here. The DX10 graph view gives a continuous measure of the most distant stations to receive you. You can change the duration of this view and, again, in comparison mode, the other chosen stations' results will be included. The spots map provides a global map with the positions of the receiving stations marked. In comparison mode, different colours indicate whether you, the other station, or both of you have been heard. Hovering the cursor over these spots reveals the distance and the signal-to-noise ratio that you were received at. The spots table is a raw list of all your spots. You can export this for further analysis if you like. The new call and band page enables you to add your call sign and select which bands you want to view results for. And finally, the new comparison page enables you to pick another WSPR beacon station to compare your results with. Okay, let's get this thing connected up and on the air. We connect to a well-matched aerial and connect up a power supply. Here I'm using a simple battery power supply. You'll see that the LED starts flashing slowly to indicate that it's powered and ready to start. We wait until the start of an even minute, at which point we press the power button on the front of the WSPR light like so. The steady LED indicates that the unit is transmitting, and that will go off at the end of the 2-minute transmit cycle and will re-illuminate every time the unit is transmitting. The unit will give 3 green short flashes and 1 long green flash at the beginning of each 2-minute cycle. So you know it's running, and the start of the longer green dash should mark the beginning of the minute. So as I start my WSPR light, you can hear what the transmission sounds like on a receiver in my shack, and we can have a look at some of the results. I've been running the WSPR light for a few days on my 40-metre dipole, first at 11 metres above ground level, then at 6 metres above ground level to compare the effects. I've also run the WSPR light on a small magnetic loop to look at how directional it might be, as it has deep nulls on receive. One of the issues with analysing changes on a single aerial over a few days is that propagation changes can make the results incomparable. The joy of the SOTA-Beam's offering is that I can simply and easily use the results of another WSPR station local to me as a baseline in my comparisons to attempt to eliminate this problem, as we'll both be affected by propagation changes. On DXplorer, I selected a new call/band, entered my call sign and selected the band I'd set up my WSPR light on. When I select New Comparison, I can enter any WSPR station I like, but DXplorer naturally gives me a starting list with the most local stations who are operating on the same band at the very top. This table includes their output power, so I can select another station with similar output to myself. The DX10 graph view enables me to look at my maximum distances worked over time, which can indicate good operating times. And it also enables me to compare my results with another station so that as I make changes to my aerials, I can see the relative performance changes irrespective of propagation conditions. I can see that, unsurprisingly, dropping the height of my dipole reduces the performance compared with the other station. The magnetic loop results, shown here in isolation, were rather disappointing, but the map view does suggest directivity. With no comparison station, the DXplorer map view colour codes the hits, light yellow for strong signals and dark orange or red for weak signals. So I've been using the WSPR light for over a month now, and I confess before I started I didn't really understand what the point of WSPR was, other than seeing how far you could work with just a few milliwatts. Now I've had experience of using this little beacon for a few weeks, I'm starting to understand its potential as a way of analysing your local propagation conditions and also analysing your aerial performance, especially when you're making changes over time. My thanks to Richard for this WSPR light to test, and you can find this and many other interesting ham products at sotabeams.co.uk. So 73s, get out there and enjoy your radio.
Okay, if we can have the lights for a second. I have one more by the same gentleman. And this time, he's gonna review, remember I mentioned in the beginning, there's 2 units, one at a cost of about $73, the other one at a cost of around $93, and one has the the filtering built in. The other one has nothing, but it gives you a big range, 6 meters all the way down. Well, this one here is going to be about that, the Flexi. And it's going to compare the one that he just spoke about, the light and the Flexi, and he's going to show you the difference between the two. Okay, you ready?
Here it goes.
Okay, you kill the lights. Just hit the Flexi. Just hit that.
As a SOTA operator using QRP radios and unoptimal aerials, it's important for me to get the very most out of what I've got, which is why I've been a keen user of WSPR to analyse different aerial performance. Lugging a laptop, interface and radio up to a hilltop just to perform a test doesn't really appeal, which is why I've been a big fan of the WSPR Lite self-contained WSPR transmitter. In early 2018, SOTA Beams upgraded the standard WSPR Lite Classic to create the WSPR Lite Flexi. So let's have a look at what's new. Hi, it's Michael, G0POT. So about a year ago, SOTA Beams launched the WSPR Lite, a tiny self-contained WSPR transmitter solution for 630, 160, 80, 40, 30 and 20 meters, providing up to 200 milliwatts on each of the 6 bands. This little marvel was offered in conjunction with DXplorer, a web-based analysis tool that enabled users to compare their results with other stations, making the whole package a rather useful aid to investigating aerial design, performance and propagation. A year on, and SOTA Beams have updated the package with the new WSPR Lite Flexi, that builds on the success of the WSPR Lite Classic, adding new bands and a few enhanced features. If you've never seen the WSPR Lite, then check out my review, which gives you all the details on what the WSPR Lite is, how to set it up, and how to use it to analyse your aerials. I've put a link in the description below. In this update, I thought I'd concentrate on the new features offered by the WSPR Lite Flexi, and also other developments in the configuration utility that we've seen over the last year. So, what's fundamentally new? Physically, the Flexi is still the same small and lightweight transmitter as its predecessor, measuring in identically at 56 by 50 by 17 millimeters, or for our American friends, approximately 2.2 by 2 by 0.7 of an inch, and weighing just 43 grams or 1.5 ounces. It has a single control button on the front end and an indicator LED to report operating status. It uses a micro USB connection for both configuring and powering the unit, and an SMA female socket to connect to your aerial. It now packs in 11 bands from 630 meters all the way up to 6 meters. The configuration tool may not include 60 meters by default for regulatory reasons, but users have compiled the configuration tool to include it if that's important to you. It still provides a maximum of 200 milliwatts output across all of the supported bands, with the exception of 6 meters, where the hardware will not deliver 200 milliwatts reliably. So Richard limits this to 100 milliwatts for this band. The WSPR Lite Classic included built-in low-pass filtering for 20 and 30 meters, but always needed an external low-pass filter for the lower bands. The Flexi has no built-in low-pass filtering, and so an external solution is recommended. I've built my own low-pass filter, but SOTA Beams do stock a few options, including a 3-band low-pass filter kit aimed at the WSPR Lites that you can configure for any 3 bands from 160 meters up to 6 meters. WSPR has really become extremely popular over the last couple of years, so Richard has introduced 2 new features to help the Flexi address this. Note that you will need to be using version 1.2.1 or later of the configuration utility to get access to some of the new features. The first of those features is an interference avoidance algorithm that uses statistical data on the frequency distribution of WSPR transmitters to help it to pick frequencies that have more chance of being clear. It also uses a much higher proportion of the available whisper spectrum, again helping to reduce the chances of interference to and from other whisper users. Users also have the ability to set their own transmit frequency on the Flexi, a feature not supported on the Classic. If you own or have access to more than one whisper light, it's possible to synchronise their transmissions. To do this, make sure both units have the latest firmware and configure them with different call signs and the same percentage repeat rate, and then start them at exactly the same time. I do this by starting one connected to an aerial and a second connected to a dummy load. I can then move to the location of the second aerial and connect the second whisper light to it during a 2-minute window when the device is not transmitting. One of the interesting features of the whisper light is that due to its small size and low power consumption, it can be set up to run almost anywhere for long periods of time. Whisper transmissions are a little time critical, however. Therefore, it's important for the device to keep good time, otherwise it will transmit out of sequence, simply causing QRM. To ensure the device stays within the timing tolerances, the WhisperLite Classic is limited to running uninterrupted for 30 days. Design improvements have allowed the Flexi to extend this to up to 45 days.
Note also that if you're using a USB power pack, they may switch themselves into standby due to the intermittent and low current draw of the Whisper lights. SOTA-beams do produce a little keep alive dongle which can be placed in series between your battery and the Whisper light to overcome this.
When the Whisper light was launched, the configuration utility used to set it up only ran on a PC, and given the very portable nature of the Whisper light, many people asked for an app to allow them to use a tablet or mobile phone to load the configuration. SOTA-beams duly delivered, and an Android app is now available. There's also a macOS version of the configuration utility for us Mac users, available via the WhisperLite Facebook group. This has been updated to support the new WhisperLite Flexi features.
While trialling the WhisperLite Flexi and WhisperLite Classic, I tried setting the two devices up on two HF loops to compare the performance of both. I synchronised the two WhisperLites to transmit at the same time and then set them up on the loops. I immediately noticed that one wasn't getting as many hits, and when I listened to my transmissions, I could hear distortion on one of the signals. This was caused by my using a poor quality USB supply. You can hear the difference between a good quality supply or battery, where the transmissions sound like this, and a poor quality USB supply, where the transmission sounds like this. Be aware of this when powering your device. If in doubt, or if you find yourself having problems, SOTA-beams produce a power conditioner kit to provide a clean supply for your Whisper light.
The WhisperLite has been extremely popular, and I find it incredibly useful and super quick and easy to use for testing aerials or monitoring my local propagation. The Flexi builds on the success of the Classic and gives some useful additional features and, of course, a whole lot of extra bands, including 6 meters. To find out more about the Flexi, get along to www.sotabeams.co.uk. Now, whether you're into Whisper or Worked All Britain, get out there and enjoy your radio.
Chet, who does the receiving? Who generates?
There's beacons throughout the world, and if you look at Joe Taylor's, the explanation I gave in the very beginning, where it involves your radio, it involves a computer. Now the computer could be used for receiving only, and you could be one of hundreds of people across the world. And then what you do is you set the computer up, and it automatically uploads every few minutes information that it's been receiving, and this here goes onto the internet and goes onto these sites here, and that gives you your reports. Now, to begin with, I bought my original SOTA-beams directly from Britain, and the price was roughly the same. In the United States here, there's only one store that I know that carries it. That's DX Engineering. ham radio outlet, the rest of them, they don't carry. I don't know why, but maybe they got a corner on the market. But DX Engineering, they do carry it, and you could look it up on their site. Now, Joe Taylor's site, I don't know if you saw in the beginning of the video, it showed a nice map of the world, and it said whisper.net in the upper left-hand corner. That's Joe's. Now, what I have done